Hello and welcome. Let's try to determine all possible power series for each function here below. But how do you really know if you need to use a Taylor series or a Laurent series? That is exactly what we are going to talk about in this video. How do you really determine which one to use? So I made this small flowchart for you guys, which will help you to determine the appropriate series. And the only thing you really need to know to use it is if the point of expansion, C0, is an isolated singularity for a function, and what the shape of a region looks like. And I think the best way to really get the hang of this flowchart is to do some examples, so let's get going. To be able to determine the different regions for a function, we always need to start by marking the important points on a graph, and the important points are always going to be the point of expansion, C0, which in this case is going to be c is equal to 0, and the isolated singularities for a function, which in this case is going to be at c is equal to 1. And from this information we can create two different regions, one inside the circle and one outside of it. So by using the flowchart now for a region inside of a circle, we can start by seeing that the point of expansion, C0, is not an isolated singularity for a function, and the region seems to look something like this. And therefore the power series we will end up with will be a Taylor series. That wasn't so complicated, right? Let's try to do it one more time, but this time with the other region, everything outside of the circle. So C0 is still not an isolated singularity, and the region in this case seems to look something like this. And therefore we will end up with a Laurent series in this case. And now we'll try to repeat this method for our next example. So here you can see that the point of expansion is at c is equal to 1, and the function got isolated singularities at c is equal to 1 and at c is equal to 2. And we can therefore create two different regions, one inside of a circle and one outside of a circle. And if we now use our flowchart for our first region, we can note that the point of expansion, C0, is actually an isolated singularity for a function in this case, which means that we will end up with a Laurent series, and we will actually get the same results for the other region, since the point of expansion is still an isolated singularity. For our last example, we have that we are expanding about the point c is equal to 0, and the isolated singularities for a function can be found at c is equal to 1 and c is equal to 2. Which means that we can create the following three regions. And we can start by noting that for all cases we have that the point of expansion is not an isolated singularity. So we have to determine for each region what the region looks like to determine the appropriate power series. So for our first region, we can see that this one seems to match this one here, which means that in this region we are going to get a Taylor series. And for our next region, we can see that that one matches to this thing here. So in this region we are going to end up with a Laurent series. And the last one can simply be matched to this thing here. So we are going to end up with a Laurent series in this case also. I really hope that this video helped you to understand when you need to use a Taylor series and when you need to use a Laurent series. And if you still got some questions about the subject, just let me know in comments, and I will be sure to answer them. So that was everything for this time. Thanks for watching.